everyone, this is an exciting video. I have the AnkerMake M5. Guys, these are my initial thoughts and review on this machine. I've put a roughly 25 to 50 hours on this machine. Don't really know exactly, but I feel like it's enough that I can tell you guys whether you need to buy this machine. And I'll tell you everything you need to know. Guys, this is going to be a good one. Stick around. I have my notes right here. And guys, the first thing that I want to talk about is the aesthetics of this machine. It is absolutely beautiful. Every other printer that I'm aware of or that I own, it really is just an eyesore, and I would not want it in my living room. Now, I obviously wouldn't particularly want this in my living room, but it would fit. It's pretty, it's nice looking, it looks like a final product, and I kind of think it is a final product, and I'll get more of that later. But it really is just beautiful. You've got the belts hidden in these channels. You've got the Z-axis lead screws hidden in these channels. There's no extruded aluminum framing. Guys, it really is beautiful. You know, so much plastic and aluminum trim all around. Guys, overall, it's a beautiful printer. Now, the issue with this design is it's just massive. So I've got some measurements here, and the footprint of this machine is 17 inches wide and 17.5 inches deep. And that also, you have to add an inch to that because the bed protrudes somewhere between an inch and an inch roughly behind the back of the machine. So you can't just have as little amount of working space as, say, one of my Ender 3s or my WizMaker. And so I measured these printers as well to give you a rough estimate of the sheer size difference. The WizMaker P1, which was a recent Kickstarter printer as well, that is 14.25 inches wide, and it's 14.5 inches deep, and you also have to add that extra inch for the bed. But the Ender 3 V2 by Creality, that one is 16.75 wide, which is still shorter, or which is still less than the M5, but it is 12.5 inches deep. It is much, much smaller in comparison, and these other printers, they can just fit in different confined working spaces. Now, one of the other big differences between the M5, the Creality, and some of these other machines is how loud the actual machine is. And so on power up of this machine, you can kind of understand the volume that the printer is going to be. So this particular room that we're standing in now, where I filmed when there's no fans, nothing on, you know, door closed, is about 30 dB in loudness. So when I go and I flip the machine on, the power up sequence seems to be 45 dB, but when the fans kick in, it kicks in and it is just guys, it's so loud. It's 59.9 dB. That was what it capped out as. I turned the machine off and I turned it on, and the same exact thing happened again. Guys, what I recorded, I don't even think was the loudest that it can be, because there are certain times where it's running its diagnostic sequence, which I'm not really sure what that is, but when it runs its diagnostic sequence and the fan kicks in, that it's that max fan speed for a long time. And that max fan sequence is what you're going to be hearing when you're printing. So maybe it's not 100%, maybe it's at 75%. Sure, the slicer might change that from one print to the next. But even if it's at 75%, if that is operating at, you know, 56 or 57 dB, generally when it's printing, that is significantly louder than my Sobol SVO2 back here or my Ender 3 V2s. Guys, I have a link to that video up there, and I actually did a sound showdown with these two printers because I was very, very impressed with how quiet the SVO2 is. Anyway, guys, all this to say, this printer, due to its size and due to how loud it is, there is no way I would ever put this machine in my bedroom. Absolutely not. And I would put this thing out in the garage where it's dusty before I ever chose to put it in my bedroom. So there's that. I guess moving on, guys, the assembly for this machine was very, very easy. It came with a very thick booklet, which of course I kept, and you should do the same if you buy the printer. But the booklet was very straightforward. There was about 10 to 15 pages that were helpful for me because the rest of it was other languages. But guys, there was maybe 5 or 6 steps. Very easy, anyone could do it. The Ender 3 V2s, I keep hinting down here, you guys can't even see them. The Ender 3 V2s, guys, they come as straight extruded aluminum. You have to pretty much put every single piece together. This was mostly assembled. I did it by myself in about 10 minutes. I know what I'm doing, but even if you don't, you could probably assemble this printer in less than 30 minutes. Almost guaranteed. It was very, very easy. So guys, the next thing that I want to cover is going to be how you load models to this machine. That kind of is very expansive and it kind of touches a bunch of topics. But the number one way, which would be more standard, is loading it locally. And so this printer does not have an SD card slot. And so, of course, I have 9 other 3D printers that have SD cards. On some of them, I can take the SD card out and put it into the next one, and it just works. Can't do that with this machine, no SD card slot. You have a USB-C here on the top. And what's even worse is this printer doesn't come with a USB-C. So if I want to get local files on this machine printed, I need to go buy a USB-C, which is just going to add anywhere from $15 to $30, maybe even more depending on where you live in the world. And USB-C as a local storage is not common. It's only over the last year or two. So all my other standard sized USBs, they don't fit because this is USB-C. So I can't just go take a thumb drive that I already had and just plug it on in. It doesn't work. Now, the other way you can load files is directly through the slicer. So this printer is Wi-Fi enabled. Obviously, you guys probably know that, but it's very easy. When you boot the printer up for the first time, it asks you to give it a Wi-Fi connection, you give it a password, a username, password, connect it up, good to go. So then you go over to your phone, or you go over to the printer, or sorry, to the computer, and then you can slice stuff, and you can either drag and drop it into the cloud, or you can directly from the slicer, you click the slice button, and then it has an option to print. If you click the print button, and then gives you a list of all your AnkerMake M5 printers. Obviously, if you have multiple, that's why you have the list. If you only have one, select the one. But you select a printer, and then you click the print button, it sends it over Wi-Fi, and then you could turn your computer off. You don't print from your computer. What's happening is during that transfer process, the printer is downloading the A-code file, and then from there, like I said, you can turn your computer off. You can print, and you can click the reprint button over and over and over again, and the printer doesn't lose that print, that A-code until you click the finish button or until you turn the machine off. At that point, you lose it and you have to start slicing again and send it back. But I've actually found that to be incredibly convenient to just be able to send it directly from the computer to the printer. That is literally the only way I've printed anything on this machine. Of course, I would rather probably have a USB-C, but you know, whatever. It's no big deal. So there's more to this printer, guys. Some other downsides to it, and I guess kind of hopping on back to the way it looks. You know, it looks great, but it's not very functional. There's no way to add storage containers to it, and there's no storage containers already there. Now, as a matter of fact, there is a user that has a user in the Discord community for this machine that has actually designed some storage solutions, kind of like saddlebags that go here on the side of the machine, and they look really nice. I don't know how functional they are. I haven't downloaded and printed them yet. I plan to, but they're open top. There's no lids to them because there's just not a lot of space. What happens is the saddlebags essentially go right here, so you have maybe half of an inch to an inch absolute max storage space, and it's bulky and yada yada yada. Point is, this machine doesn't really have any way to do user modifications or make user modifications, right? You know, some people in other printers, whether it's the Corally community, Elgato community, they've created 3D printable modifications that you can print on your machine to modify your machine. You can't really do that with this, especially storage solutions. You know, if I have flush cut pliers and I want to hang them somewhere, I gotta start breaking out the double stick tape and just slapping it on the side because there's no place to connect anything. And it's, you know, it's just one of the downsides, I suppose, of owning this printer. one big issue that I've noticed with this machine in the unofficial Discord community, guys, is filament blobs, where maybe you're trying to print and it doesn't adhere to the base plate, but it actually adheres to the nozzle, and you create a glob of filament around the nozzle, and it keeps extruding because it's hot and it doesn't clog, and then you get this filament buildup, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you come back to your printer and you notice that you've got 50 grams worth of filament glued to the underside of your nozzle. Everything is completely destroyed. Now, I've seen that plenty of times on our 3D printing subreddit, but never as many times as I've seen it with this machine. Now, that very well could be due to this machine catering to new 3D printer users, and they don't know what they're doing and they're just making small mistakes, so it's causing this issue. Or it could be that this printer actually has some sort of a flaw because it prints so ridiculously fast, and that, I don't know, maybe causes this to happen. But point is, I'm seeing a lot of that on the subreddit, and until this surfaces as to why this is happening, just be aware that it's possible. I personally have not had any issue with adhesion. Not a single part that I printed has flopped off of the PEI sheet, which, by the way, is very thick as compared to a PEI sheet that I was expecting to get. On my WizMaker P1, I got a single-sided PEI sheet, which feels a little bit thin in comparison to the AnchorMake PEI sheet, which, by the way, is double-sided, so you get two sides there. It's double-sided with texture on both sides, not smooth. But anyway, guys, so I personally haven't had adhesion issues, but some people have reported adhesion issues. Another issue is the hot end. So the hot end, it is direct drive, of course, and that means there's a piece of Bowden tube buried deep inside of the assembly. And I have not printed anything greater than PLA in terms of temperatures, because I have seen many reports of people having their Bowden tube melt, and of course I don't want to have that. Now, I would love to print PETG on this machine because I've been having a good time with PETG lately, but it's not worth it for me to damage the hot end, so I've only printed PLA. Now, again, same issue as last time, could be because there's a bunch of new users and they're cranking the temperature way up past 250. I have no idea. Point is, I've been noticing a lot of those reports, and because of that, I haven't chosen to print anything higher than 215 degrees Celsius. And also broken screws. So broken hot end screws, I've noticed that they're broken or melted. Again, same issue, might be new users, but a lot of people are taking to disassembling the inner workings of their hot end, and a lot of people are breaking screws. Now, I don't know if this is because they're using, AnchorMake is using screws that aren't temperature resistant, or I don't know what, guys. People are breaking screws down there, and they're they're breaking threads, the screw halfway through, halfway in the middle of it, and the threads are getting stuck in their their heat block, and just a whole slew of issues that I really hope I don't have. I was recording this video and I realized I never talked about the AI camera, so that was a big mistake, and I need to mention the camera because the short answer is it sucks, the AI sucks, the time lapses aren't that great, and that's pretty much all you gotta know. So if you bought this printer, or you were gonna buy this printer for the camera, you made a mistake, and now I gotta find a place in the review to squish this clip in. Okay, and one more thing before we start to talk about my experience printing with this machine. Guys, I want to first give a big shout out to Anchor for the tool set that they have included. This is big, this is nice. All the other tools supplied by all the other 3D printing makers are just total garbage. Now, I would not personally choose to use these tools. However, it comes in a very nice tool case. I have used them for a couple of reasons. It's just more convenient because it's closer or whatever, but it comes in a nice tool case. You have all the sizes of hex screws that you're ever going to need for this machine. It comes with a nice pair of flush cut pliers, and you do get a nozzle needle that comes in an actual tube. You also get an extra nozzle, and guys, this nozzle is proprietary, I believe, but the community has found nozzles. I'll have information down in the description below on how you can get new nozzles for this printer without having to pay AnchorMake's pricing for nozzles. Good on them for including this really nice toolkit. Guys, if you do want upgraded tools, I'll have links in the description for upgraded tools, but it's not necessary. Anyway, now on to my experience with the actual process of printing with this machine. So the very first thing I printed was this thing hand from the Addams Family, or from Wednesday. It got popular because Wednesday is now on Netflix. And this is a sculpt, so you'll notice a lot of wrinkles in this model. But guys, overall, it really turned out good. Now, everything here was sliced with the AnchorMake slicer, and it was sliced with the default settings on the expert mode profile. The only thing that might have been changed is changing layer height from 0.2 to 0.16. That's probably the only thing that's going to change from model to model. But guys, this turned out fantastic. Now, of course, this is an organically shaped model, so the Z-seams are going to be very, very obvious. I do think the Z-seams are maybe a little too big for this model, and I think that might be due to the slicer, but nonetheless, overall, very good model. Now, the next thing that I printed was this Thanos statue. Now, I printed this in a Marvel PLA, and wow, guys, this printed fast. I don't have the exact times on any of these for printing, but I'll tell you right now, if I printed this on any other machine, it would have been drastically slower. This said it was going to take, I think, like 13 or 14 hours, and it was done in like 8 or something like that. I mean, it was insanely fast. Now, AnchorMake, they say that their slicer, or that their machine can run at 250 millimeters per second. That's probably only in extreme cases. So if you're printing something small, like this kangaroo from Flexi Factory, you're probably not going to be hitting 250 millimeters per second because the accelerations aren't high enough. But guys, I will say, without a doubt, this printer does print quicker. And guys, I mean, this Thanos statue really is just beautiful, and there's essentially no flaws. When you get up to the top of the face area, you might have some issues with an ear, or maybe the other ear, or, you know, eyebrow area, but I mean, overall, this is very, very, very acceptable, and I am very happy with it. Now, one of the next things I printed was the Flexi Factory kangaroo. This filament, I know for a fact, is really cheap, crappy filament, so I think this did a fantastic job for what I was expecting. This filament is wet, I did not dry it. So this filament's bad. So any of the issues you see here, you could probably just attribute to the filament itself. But I wanted to print something that was going to match the room, and I just wanted to test something out. So I printed this, and I wanted to see how it was going to work with the flexi joints. Now, if you're not familiar, print in place. You print an item flat on the print bed, and then when you pop it off, the joints are just connected, and I was very pleased to see that this just worked. Now, I didn't have to calibrate anything on this machine. I'm pretty sure Flexi Factory has pretty large room for error on the printers that when he designs his models, but it worked, and I was very happy to see that. Another thing that I printed was this little Joey. This little Joey just fits right into his pouch, and again, I used an incredibly difficult filament to print. This is matte terracotta from Hatchbox. I have had extreme issues with this printing, and so I'm very, very, very pleased with the fact that this printed well. So I printed the Eiffel Tower, guys. I did a time-lapse of this and using the AnchorMake time-lapse feature automatically, and it looks beautiful. It turned out to be a total length of 36 seconds. And I, of course, in this video have sped it up. But this is what I would consider to be more of a torture test, and it definitely has issues towards the top, but if you just look at it from a distance, it's beautiful, you know exactly what it is, and I am impressed that this printed as well as it did. Now, of course, this is a direct drive setup, so I would expect it to print a little bit better than a Bowden setup, but guys, this really does look beautiful, and I'm very happy with how this turned out. So I also printed out a vase mode print, and believe it or not, I have been 3D printing for 2 or 3 years now, and this is the first time that I ever made a vase mode print. Now, vase mode, the nozzle goes down and goes around and around and around and never picks back up. So you would expect this to look beautiful, and as you would expect, it pretty much does look beautiful. There's very little flaws in here. Towards the middle, there is a break in where the filament touches, and there's kind of a hole all the way around. It's weird. If you look at it from the inside, you can see the light shining through. I don't know if that's a slicer issue or if that was an issue with the actual 3D print. Or you know, the printer, I have no idea. But overall, looks very good, sturdy, holds up well. I'm pleased with how this worked, or how this printed. So I 3D printed these 6x6 chainmail pieces. Now I printed them more as a bed level test, but guys, it handled these very, very well. So I printed one in each corner and one in the center, all at the same time. And I don't have any issues with these printed pieces, but it did bring up an issue with the actual printer itself. So the auto bed leveling is not aggressive enough. It just plain isn't. I had my Z offset set to 0.08, and it did a good job in every single corner except this front right corner. And I've heard the nozzle dragging along the print bed, and that is not acceptable. When you have a 7x7 bed, as well as no possible way to adjust the bed, there's no bed screws, and the only way to get a good print is with auto bed level, and you're reliant on it, guys, auto bed level is absolutely required to work well. And my nozzle was dragging, and it probably would have printed fine if I didn't change it, but I had to up it from 0.08 to 0.1, and it was still dragging a little bit, but at least it printed just fine. Guys, I think the auto bed level on the AnkerMake M5 needs to be a little more aggressive, and luckily this printer has Wi-Fi. Anker can change that with one knob. They can just turn it up a little bit, and everything's good to go. So here we have the Yeti. The Yeti is the most beautiful 3D print I've ever made. There's not much to say about it. It is flawless, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. Usually I throw my 3D prints away after a few months. They just sit around and it's a waste of space. And this one definitely is sticking with me. I might even paint this one because it's just that perfect. Oh, now we have the torture toaster, and this really bothers me quite a bit because the toast works, but I expected that because I have my chainmail floppy and I have my Kangaroo and my Yeti. They seem to work just fine. So the tolerances on the toaster and the toast are as expected. This works, no issues whatsoever. It's pretty smooth. I don't really seem to care about that, but the gears on the side, I have issues with the gears on the side. One of them seems to work just fine, and it's not that one, it must be this one. The gears work. They're a little bit tight, but I can twist them pretty much every time, and it flips right open. The gear on the other side, this gear is tight, and I don't know why. It is, as I'm recording this video, I actually might have just loosened it up, which is funny. But, guys, I have been twisting this thing probably for 5 minutes since I printed it, and it was loose, or it was not loose at all. It was very, very rough. But when you flip it on the inside and you look at the overhangs, this kind of confirms what I was seeing with Thanos and the overhangs. This printer has a killer fan. It does a fantastic job, no pun intended. But guys, over here at the 80 mark, it just handled it like a champ. It looks beautiful, right? Like, I can tell that there are layer lines on the 80-degree mark, but it did a very, very, very good job. And my other issue with this is when I flip it over to the other side, the inside here, 0.5 millimeters straight up doesn't work. I had to really, really, really force it in order to loosen it. And even after I loosened it, it still doesn't work very well. So there's an issue here. The tolerances are not good, right? When you have big tolerances like this, they just work, and it's no big deal. But when you have tight tolerances like this, it starts to have issues. So after enough force, I was able to break the 0.5 free, but if I had threads that were 0.5, absolutely no way that would work. I just broke it free. It didn't actually make it functional. Then to get to 0.4, when I was trying to break that free, I actually broke the model. And the inside of the toaster, I broke it because I was applying so much force. And I still can't get this thing free. So if I can't get 0.4 free, there is absolutely no way I will ever get any of these other ones free. So if you have tight tolerances, this is not the printer for you. And a couple more things. Guys, the Z-Seam or the Z-Zits are popping back up again. I noticed these on a different model, particularly the Benchy that was pre-sliced and preloaded onto the printer. These, I think there is an issue with this printer in terms of the Z-Seams, and I think they need to be slightly just better, because these Z-Seams are very, very noticeable. I recognize that there's no way to hide this, that there's no sharp corner to hide them on, but they're still very, very noticeable, and I think if I sliced this in Cura and printed it with my Ender 3, it wouldn't look this bad. And this kind of goes with the tight tolerances, but guys, the text is readable, but this text is very big. If this text was much smaller, it would be unreadable. And as a matter of fact, I printed a Benchy, and I have no idea where it went, but I printed a Benchy, and the license plate on the back was so fuzzy and so blurry and so bad, if you handed it to someone and said, "What is that?" they wouldn't even think it was a license plate. It would just look like rough ridges. So when you have text that's small, this printer can't handle it. When you have fine detail, this printer is not going to be able to handle it. I love this printer, and if someone asked me if I would recommend it, the answer would be a really big, I don't know. It really depends on the situation you're in. So, it's an $800 printer, right? You know, I got it for a lot less on Kickstarter, but now it's $800. That is a pretty penny. That is very expensive, seeing as I just reviewed a printer that I bought for $59, and it seems to work. So here is my final answer. If you are a DIYer and you want to DIY your printer, do not buy this machine. If you're a DIYer and you just want it for other hobbies, whether it's D&D or for creating hinges for around the house or other functional prints around the house, go for it, right? This printer is always going to work. If you're a brand new 3D printerer, I don't know. If you're a brand new 3D printerer, this machine probably is good for you if you have the money to spend. But if you don't have the money to spend, I would go somewhere else. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys. If you have any questions about this printer, drop them in the comments below. And if this was helpful for you, give it a like and a subscribe. Guys, all the likes and subscribes are very helpful. They keep me motivated and they keep me uploading videos. So guys, if it was helpful, like I said, drop a like and a subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.